very good evening to all of you. On behalf of TCS ION, I, Mudita Bansal, welcome you all to this webinar on problem-based learning. Problem-based learning is a learning and teaching strategy which endeavors to promote active learning by giving control of the process to the learner. This involves using open-ended and unstructured problems to trigger learning. Students have to analyze the problems, decide what they need to know, gain the knowledge, and develop appropriate solutions. Group work is an integral part of the strategy, with sharing and evaluation of learning forming an essential element in the development of solutions. As the students are given control over the detailed curriculum and are required to evaluate and apply their learning, a greater sense of ownership is developed than would be by the traditional education processes. This, coupled with the excitement of exploration inherent in PBL, creates a noticeable buzz among the learners. However, a number of difficulties arise when implementing PBL, especially when attempting to integrate it into a course of study delivered largely. Ma'am, could you go on mute, please? I'll repeat the last sentence. This, coupled with the excitement of exploration inherent in PBL, creates a noticeable buzz among the learners. However, a number of difficulties arise when implementing PBL, especially when attempting to integrate it into a course of study delivered largely using traditional teaching methods. Some of these difficulties are inherent in the PBL process, while others arise from the juxtaposition of the two strategies. Today, we will talk about the introduction of PBL to one unit of an otherwise traditionally taught program and discuss some of the implications of the same. With great pleasure, I welcome and introduce our guest speaker today, Ms. Vasavadatta Sarkar. Ms. Sarkar is a passionate educator and leader who believes in leading by example, working hand in hand with her team, and making a difference in children's lives. She has a post-graduation degree in history and education from the University of Kolkata and more than 2 decades of experience as an educator. Presently, she is heading Vega Schools as a principal. She has been entrusted with the task of sculpting young minds and guiding them in their journey through the early years of their lives. She takes pride in seeing things from a child's perspective and understanding their underlying concerns. Her prime goal is to be a mentor as well as a friend to them and teach them about the importance of empathy. Because in today's world, academic excellence, only if complemented with key values and civic sense, will we be able to create ideal future citizens. We welcome you, Vasavadatta ma'am, to the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will start directly with the topic. What, according to you, is problem-based learning?
Okay, so problem-based learning, or PBL, is an inquiry-based learning where we use real-world problems as the content matter and not just textbook material. So we look at the world around us, we look at problems that are there, and we use those problems. The children use them as to create a project out of it, and they try and come to solutions that are of use to the society. And it is extremely active, it is hands-on, it is learning by doing. It is based on the KWL model, where it is what you know, what you want to know, what you need to learn. And the main intention behind PBL currently is that we need to create learners who are life ready, who are future ready. It is very, very obvious that the world is changing very, very rapidly, and our children need more than mere academics if they were to thrive in college and their careers and their choices beyond. And we need to equip them with skills that will help them deal with challenges and problems in the real world, so that they are able to ace challenges in the real world and not just make tests in an exam situation. So PBL is a very, very hands-on, active learning methodology.
Thank you so much for that summary, ma'am. Moving on, could you please tell our viewers how PBL is different from traditional teaching of one teacher and a class full of 40 plus students?
Okay, so in traditional teaching, what happens is textbooks are used as the subject matter. And that is where you have direct instruction. You have a teacher delivering the content matter in a very, very one-sided manner, and the student needs to just sit back and absorb facts, which he needs to learn through rote memorizing and, put it out in an exam situation at a later date. Whereas in PBL, we choose a project. Rather, the children themselves, through voice and choice, they sit and they deliberate and they choose a real-world problem, which they then do through a project. And it is absolutely active learning as opposed to the passive learning that you have in the traditional setup. Again, in the traditional setup, it's one size fits all. But in the PBL method, because it is learner directed, the child takes control of his own learning because he is now wanting to find solution to a problem there, and therefore he moves at his own pace. So it is differentiated learning, taking into account all kinds of learners with different abilities and skills. And this, the traditional method puts a lot of pressure on the child because of the rote learning, and because it is rote learning, the understanding is not so deep. It does not allow for deeper understanding of the subject matter. Whereas in PBL, what happens, it's active and it's constructive. So for instance, you will have in traditional, you would be given, say, a wrench, a screwdriver, and told that, okay, this is a wrench, this is a hammer, this is a screwdriver, this is a bolt, and this is a nut. But in the PBL setup, we do it through 4 levels of knowledge. So they are referred to as depth of knowledge, DOK 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the traditional setup, when you give them the screwdriver and the wrench and all of that, so it's DOK 1 and 2, which is this recall and reproduce. But in the PBL setup, having told them all of that, you would then possibly give them a car maybe and told to assemble it or reassemble it again. And that is where the application of knowledge comes in, because now, having known what a screwdriver or a wrench is, the children will know how and where to use it. Why is it that you don't use a wrench for a screw to open a screw? Only a screwdriver is required over there. So the application of knowledge comes in. And because the interest and curiosity of the child has been triggered, the understanding is deeper. And you'll find that in the traditional setup, there's no room for development of social skills, because it's just a one-sided thing where the teacher is talking and the child is absorbing. But in PBL, you have development of all the 21st century skills, because when they're working on a project, they're sitting together in a group, they are talking to each other, they're exchanging notes, they're negotiating, they're putting forward their ideas, they are accepting the ideas of others even if they don't like it. So there's a lot of development of the 21st century skills that we talk about. And once again, in traditional learning, there is very few opportunity of a connection between the old and the new. You see, a teacher will say that, all right, we finished with this chapter, let's move on to the next chapter. But in a PBL setup, you can never do that unless and until you have understood the previous very, very clearly. And as I keep saying, that the children need to understand the relevance of what they are learning. Unless they understand, what is it in for me? Why do I need to learn this? Pollution, for instance. If they're taught pollution, there are 2 ways of doing it. You give them the definition of pollution and say, okay, you look around you, there's pollution happening. Fine, they understand it. But why do I need to know about pollution? The minute you tell them that, going forward, this is how pollution is affecting you or your friends or your family or the world around you, just look around what is happening, immediately it makes sense to them. And immediately children themselves then will come up with, say no to crackers. Or when we had Lohri recently, a lot of them turned around and said that we understand that there is a religious significance behind Lohri maybe, but let's just do it symbolically at home, because you know what? It's going to affect the atmosphere. So you will have a sense of deeper understanding, because children are really delving deep where PBL is concerned. And the transfer and retention factor in PBL works better Transfer is when you are able to apply your knowledge. Retention is when you are able to recall knowledge very easily because the interest was there, the curiosity factor was there when you learnt it. And assessments also, you will find that in the traditional setup, assessments are very one-sided. It's a question paper that's given and the children are expected to regurgitate facts that they have absorbed without understanding, whatever. But whereas in PBL, you have a continuous formative, summative assessment happening where the teachers are continuously assessing them on not just content learned, but the skills of articulation, presentation, the confidence with which you're presenting yourself. Do you have critical thinking skills? Are you able to evaluate? Are you able to analyze? All of that comes in because you are working on everything through projects in the PBL setup. So I would say that there are very many positives of PBL. I'm not saying that a traditional setup is not good. We've come to the traditional setup, but times have changed hugely. The landscape of the world is changing very rapidly. And, you have employers who are looking for different kind of skills in the workplace now. And we need to equip our children with all of that.
How interesting, ma'am. While you were talking, it felt like I wish I had gone to such a school in my time. It would have been so interesting, no doubt.
Yes.
So moving on, what is the role of a problem in PBL and how do the teachers facilitate PBL in a classroom?
Wow, that is a very interesting question, I would say, because in PBL, it is the problem that is the main focal. And it is the problem that should be a good real world problem because, children need to learn the relevance of what they are doing. Why do I need to learn this? And the problem has to be one that, triggers the curiosity button in them. Why do I need to know this? So say, for instance, in grade 6, you have very abstract concepts like discrimination, stereotype, gender biases. Now there again in grade 6, 11-year-old child, you just tell the child that, okay, discrimination, this is the definition for discrimination. Learn it by heart and these are the examples of discrimination. Sure, they learn it and then there's an exam and they write it out there, word perfect, 5 on 5 they get. But 3 days later, you ask them what discrimination or stereotype is, they will not be able to tell you what it is because they simply haven't understood that. But whereas if you take it into the PBL setup, you will find that it works differently because as we did it at Vega, what we did was we started a discussion in class. In Vega, when we do PBL, we start with what is called the I lead cycle. And in that I lead cycle, right at the beginning, there is an activity called GITS, Getting in the Zone. I'll talk about it in detail later on. But in the Getting in the Zone is where you have an activity maybe in class where you have, and I'm telling you how we did it with our grade 6s, where you had a discussion with them and they started discussing and we brought in ads that were there, fair and lovely ads, fair and handsome ads. We showed them clips from beauty pageants where they saw, tall and thin and very, very fair models walking down the ramp. And they kind of realized that, okay, there is something over here. A certain kind is discussed as pretty and a certain kind is discussed as not so pretty. So fair is good and dark is not so good. Fat is not so good and thin is very, very good. And they started discussing that and then they realized that amongst themselves also they did what was called discrimination when they pointed out to somebody and said, oh, you have, pimples on your face or you have acne on your face. So then they realized that amongst themselves also what they do is a mild form of discrimination. And they started discussing it with the didis and bhaiyas who were in school. And they went out into the villages outside school and they walked into the slums and they interviewed people over there. And they came away very, very worried because they found that the girl child is not being treated very well. It's the girl child who's made to sit at home and it's the boy child who has to go to school. So idea about discrimination, about gender bias, about stereotypes, fair and dark, fat and thin, all of that was becoming very, very clear to them. And they realized that it was a real world problem, that there is a problem out there and there are homes where girls are kept at home and boys are sent outside. So they felt that we need to make society aware of this. And which class of society? The lower class of society, where all of this is possibly happening at a very high level, and the dark and fair also. So then they decided, and now you see what has happened, because they want to find a solution to the problem. They now have taken learning into their own hands, and there's new learning happening because they now wanted to create a video to put out there and create social awareness. So in comes a videographer, in comes a photographer, teaches them all those skills, and they put together a film which they uploaded on YouTube, and they also went back to the slum area next door to show it to them that this is what we need to break the bias against color and fatness and all of that. And therefore, the problem is a very important part in this real world scenario, because it is that problem that captures the attention of the student. And it is that problem that triggers the curiosity factor. And having delved deep into this, these abstract concepts of discrimination, stereotypes, gender bias became very, very easy for them to understand, and it was something that they would remember not for 40 hours or 40 days, but for maybe 40 years. That is what the main thing about PBL is, where the understanding is very, very deep. Now, having done this entire thing, you see, we follow what is called a I-lead cycle. And like I said, we have the GITS activity that you have initially. After the GITS activity, you come up with what is called a I think, where you come back and the children. Now, the GITS activity could be anything. It could be a video that is shown. It could be a visit to a museum, a slum. It could be an activity that they've done in class, anything. Now, having done that entire thing, you now have the children coming back and sitting and discussing what is it that we have done. So all kinds of questions come up. So there are probing questions which take them beyond what they have seen currently. Then there would be factual questions, and these questions actually get the children to recall material that they've already learned before. Then you had divergent questions, questions which have no right or wrong answers, but you have them thinking at a concrete and an abstract level to arrive at an appropriate response. And then you have higher order thinking questions, HOTS as we call them. And these are questions which require learners to figure out their answers, and whether, the answers need generalizations. Now, having done all of that, they come up with what is called a driving question. And it is this driving question that becomes the main basis of the project that they're working on. And as I said, PBL, we always do it at 4 DOK levels, depth of knowledge, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is the DOK level 4 that we are working with the projects, because that is where application of knowledge happens. So whatever you've learned, the knowledge has to be applied at level. So for instance, at the absolute nursery level, we teach them about, say, community and community workers. So we teach them about a nurse, a doctor, a fireman, a carpenter, all of that. Now, a little child of 4 would know what that is, but does he or she know how to apply that knowledge? So we give them a situation that at home, suddenly the fire alarm goes off, and you go into the kitchen and you find that there's a fire there, and your Didi has fainted and is on the floor. What will you do at that point of time? So can they then recall that, yes, we need to call a fireman and we need to call a doctor and not a nurse at this point of time? So can they apply that knowledge? And remember, these are children who are just 4 years old. So you need to have the teacher as a facilitator who is guiding towards them. The teacher will not tell them what to do, has to draw it out of them. So the teacher also needs to emphasize that the real life situation can be fuzzy. And therefore, the answers that you get, you have to look at established theories that are already there, or you need to look at multidisciplinary knowledge issues to get your answers. So it's very important for the teacher to be there to guide you along. And this is the point where, there's the induction into self-directed learning, because the teacher then forms the children into groups. Having identified the problem, having done the discussions, having come up with a driving question, she then forms them into groups. And in those groups, the children are required to research on their own. So they could take the help of their parents, of videos, of encyclopedia books. The teacher also teaches them, so that they can come up with well-informed responses. And all through this, the teacher has to ensure that key areas are not overlooked, key concepts that they really, really need to know are not overlooked, and they continuously check on the accuracy, validity, and reliability of the information that these children share. And the teacher also needs to clarify doubts at this point. She also needs to bridge all the learning gaps that are there and correct misconceptions and overgeneralizations if there are anything. And then she finally sits with the children and again guides them towards coming to a solution. And the solution could be a yes or a no or something that they've reasoned out themselves. So the role of a facilitator, a teacher in the classroom is huge, but the main PBL holds the learner right at the center. It is absolutely child-centric. So the child directs his or own learning, gets all the information in, puts it together. The teacher acts as a facilitator. So problem very important because it is a problem that acts as a stimulus, and the teacher's role very important because the teacher acts as a facilitator for the entire thing. That is how it is.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Such beautiful examples that you've given to us to make us understand how it works and what all goes in to make it work actually. So how do the students feel about this teaching approach, and who provides them the learning feedback? When is it provided? How is it provided? And how do the teachers grade the students with letters, numbers, as a matter of standards mastery or some other way? If you could talk about that.
Okay, so well, I would say that, PBL makes learning fun for them because it is their own journey of understanding and exploration. It is something that has triggered their interest, that there is, air pollution out there. Now or maybe it could be that, the teacher wants to teach them electric current in grade 7th. In physics, she wants to teach them electric current. So she gets in a toaster that doesn't work. And she says that, okay, we need to fix this toaster and we need to get it going again. And at the same time, when I work the toaster, my electricity bill is very, very high. And we need to do something to get that bill down. Now, of course, if they have to fix that electric toaster, they need to know all about electric currents and, everything to do with electricity, which is the key concept in CBSE that you need to learn. But at the same time, it's a problem. There's a toaster that needs to be fixed. So you need to know more. So it creates the need to know more, where the children now go and try to find out from various sources, how is it that I can fix this? So it becomes their own journey of learning and discovery and understanding, as opposed to just sitting and absorbing facts about electric current that the teacher gives them. And then, putting that out at an exam paper later on when it comes. It also connects them with the real world because now they know what real world problems are. When they learn about discrimination, when they learn about gender bias, when they're looking at air pollution, these are real world problems. So it gets them connected with the community and they know what is happening over there. And because they are really interested in knowing what is happening, the retention factor, the understanding is better and learning stays for a much, much longer time. Now with online classes, most of our children, rather all our children, have become very tech savvy and they know how to use the computer because everything is through the computer. But in regular teaching, the computer is part of the entire learning process. But going forward, technology is a must. So the PBL process also makes you very hands-on where technology is concerned. It trains your mind to think laterally because you're continuously trying to find connections in the real world. So you look at smoke immediately, and that smoke could be agarbatti smoke in your house also. But you think to yourself that, okay, I see smoke over there, how is it going to affect us? So you're trained to think laterally and you're not working in silos that I've just learned about smoke or electricity or water or air. You're connecting the dots continuously because that is how you have been trained to think. And then you are creating future-ready learners because, it enhances critical and creative thinkings and it develops problem-solving abilities in the learners. They are working on their research skills. They are looking at material. They're culling out matter from there which is relevant to the project because at each level they are sitting and they are discussing amongst themselves that what is relevant. We've got a huge amount of content with us, but what is? So to assess, to evaluate, to infer, to reason, all those skills are coming up. It creates leaders, it creates change makers because they're sitting And teamwork, collaboration, articulation, presentation of skills. They are then interacting with people outside their immediate comfort zone. So are they confident enough to do all of that? So all these skills that are very, very necessary, life and career skills as we refer to them as, or cornerstone skills, which will be hugely required in their workplace, because the emotional quotient also needs to be high. You are presenting what you're stating, but you also need to know how to learn and accept what the other person is saying. So those skills have to be honed and taught, and it starts in the classroom with the PBL. And it also improves and increases inclusivity, because all learners do not learn at the same pace or in the same manner. There are learners of variable abilities and different skill levels. So PBL, when you're giving them a project and you are triggering that interest over there, it engages less motivated students also. It engages the slow learners and the differently abled ones as well. So I would say that it is a very, very rich and a very educative, enriching learning process for our children, because it's something that they are interested in doing. They like what they are doing. And the minute that like factor is triggered, understanding is very deep. And how do they assess themselves? Well, the assessment is on a constant basis, because at every level there is reflection. So every level of the project that they're moving forward, there's reflection, there is self-reflection, that I stop and I look at my work, that am I going down the right track? Do I have enough material? I have to sit and present this in front of my friends tomorrow. So do I have enough relevant material, or have I gone off course? So I am assessing myself. Then when you're presenting it to your friends in your group, there is peer reflection over there also. The peer is also giving you feedback. Then you have parent feedback also, because we have what is called a SLC, a student-led conference, where the children are presenting their work to their parents. So there you have parents giving feedback over there. And of course, the teachers are constantly giving you feedback on what you're doing. And we have external diagnostic tools also, like ASSET, for instance, like Olympiads, for instance, where application of knowledge is huge, and which kind of, it tests you not on your knowledge of content, but your knowledge of creativity and application. So those are the external tools that are also there for assessment factors. And the other thing that happens there also is that at Vega, assessment is based upon skills learned and not about the content that is over there. And as I said, that we have 4 DOK levels. So at every level, the skills are assessed at the DOK levels to see whether the children have been able to do it or not. So the teacher is walking around to see that, okay, they are talking to each other. Are they negotiating well, or are they fighting? Are they accepting the other person's viewpoint, or are they saying that, no, I won't talk to you because you are not accepting what I am saying? So what are the different methods? We have a rubric that is there for assessment. So the assessment is done on various kinds, that what is the quality of the work? Is it very childish, or is it age appropriate? That is for the teacher to see. Is the content accurate? We need to clarify their doubts. If there are learning gaps, we need to fix all of that. How well was the presentation delivered? How well was the presentation designed? Now, what was the main idea? Has the child stuck to the idea, or has the child moved away from the idea entirely? What did the child learn from the project? What were the learning expectations? As you start out with your project, you need to have certain expectations that by the end of this project, this is what the child should be able to do or know. So are we achieving that through the project? That is also assessed constantly. How close is the project to the real world? What is the relevance of the concept to the project? So when I'm teaching a child, it needs to be very relevant. No point in continuously referring to water as H2O, because nobody in the world refers to water as H2O. We don't say, oh, go get me a glass of H2O. So there's no point in doing things, or, giving them a project where they have to learn the capitals of the countries by heart. There's no point. You just Google a capital and it comes up. It doesn't really help you in the workplace, in a presentation that you have to do to your boss, to know the capitals of all the countries over there. So we need to give them concepts that are relevant, and are these concepts important? That is what we need to know. Have I covered your questions, or
You
was
have
this?
covered it and pretty well, ma'am. It is. I'm getting inquisitive about really how. I mean, the students are. I would like to meet a few students from the schools.
Please.
Who are,
Please, I would
going through
love
this
it if you
curriculum.
would come to Vega. In fact, come to Vega and take a walk around, or meet with our. We refer to our students as our learners. So meet with our learners. I mean, come and watch them work in class, and at every level, they're working on different kinds of projects. They're working on projects on innovation, entrepreneurship, transport, air, all kinds of. Currently in grade 8, they are working on a project where how would you describe if you were, I mean, how would you define yourself and describe yourself if you were to live on outer space? So, there they have to learn about the entire body systems, everything, but it also has that, keeps that interest alive, that what do I do next? And it is relevant because airspace is becoming a very, very important feature. Outer space is becoming a very, very important part of their lives now.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty interesting, ma'am. Thank you. So we'll move on. How should the teachers go about the curriculum and instruction design for PBL experience? And if you could share your insight on how long it takes to create a problem-based lesson for a teacher.
Okay, all right. So at Vega, there are different ways of structuring a PBL project. And we have what is called a pre-designed and agreed upon PBL template that helps us do it. And there are set ways. So the first way is, before you do the PBL, there is the I-Lead cycle that we follow. So in the I-Lead cycle, the first bit is the GITS activity, which is getting in the zone. The getting in the zone then leads to I think, where you are coming back after you've done that activity, and you sit and there are a whole lot of questions that come up. And then the teacher guides them through that question and gets them to create a driving question. After that, after the I think, you have the I learn cycle, wherein you are learning about all these concepts, learning about the question, trying to get answers to all these questions that have come up. And you would do that through various resources. So the teacher is teaching you some bit, you get other external experts to come in, you look at YouTube videos, you go and visit TERI, or you visit, say, Aravali Biodiversity Park, or you visit a museum. So you're using various resources to find answers to all these questions that have come up. And what we do at Vega is we create an end product, which is the end of it, where we create something that will be of use to society also. We just don't leave it at that. So essentially, in this last stage, in this I lead stage, it is that they are using all the learning that was there and applying it there to come up with something that is really, really new and different, and which will be of help to the society. So in Vega, for instance, in grade 6, the children, having learnt about light and sound and movement and everything, came up with battery operated walking sticks with a light and a sound that they gave to people who were visually impaired. So that is how they use their knowledge to create something new that was of use to the society. Now, this is the way we do the teaching, but how it is done here again is that first you need to have certain aims and learning outcomes that you need to have fixed right at the beginning. Then there's a problem definition, that what is the problem that we are dealing with? What is the question and what is the solution that we are looking for? Then we come up with the grouping, the team structuring, all of that. Then we look at the discussion and we look at the resources. Where do we find the resources from? Then the guidelines are very, very important, because this is where the teacher needs to ensure that guidelines are given both for dealing with the information and dealing with and finding the solutions over there. So it is very important for the teacher at this point to step in and guide the children towards how to deal with that problem. And I dealt with this earlier when I said that, she needs to clarify doubts, and she needs to bridge all learning gaps, and she needs to ensure that key concepts that need to be known are not overlooked at this point. So we do keep it aligned with the CBSE curriculum. So whatever the requirements of the CBSE curriculum are, that also needs to be taught. So the teacher needs to ensure that none of that gets overlooked. And finally, there is a end product, and there's a end to the problem, the PBL project. Now, how long does it take? It depends on the age group of the child. So the lower the age group, it's a shorter because the attention span is also, it's not very long. So it will be long or short depending on the age group of the learner, and the depth also depends on the age group of the learner. That how much should you do, and to what length. That is how it is.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, how do you train the teachers for PBL? Definitely, there would be a specific methodology, because I'm sure as a traditional teacher, it is going to be very difficult to cater to the expectation of the complete process, and to be able to manage a class of students without a textbook, with all this new methodology that you're talking about. So there's another part of the question that I'll come to later, but let's talk about how you train the teachers for PBL first.
Okay, so see, training is a very essential part of this entire PBL process. And at Vega, we have one of our co-founders, Dr. Steve Edwards, who's a world-renowned PBL expert. He's based in the USA, but he comes to Vega thrice a year. So he comes once in January, he comes during summer, and then he comes about in November. And he ensures that the PBL training is an ongoing training. Now, PBL training is essentially training you how to think, how to apply, how to connect the dots. So it is done through giving you different kinds of situations. That if this is the situation, what would you do over here? Why would you do over here? Justify your answers. So you should be able to justify what you have done. Now here also, that is how the training of the teachers are done. They're given different situations at all points of time. And then in class also, they have to all the time continuously teach children how to justify what they are saying. So they just can't bring in any content and say that, okay, this is my response to the question that you've given us. They need to convince you, they need to justify you. So training is an ongoing process for teachers at Vega, which continues, and it is not just only in PBL, but we give them training in everything. So if there are English language workshops happening, so you have training in that. You have creative workshops, art integration workshops happening, you have training in that, because we use a lot of art and music in our PBL also. So if you have a math workshop happening, we give them training in that also. The different ways of teaching a math problem, the different kinds of manipulatives that you would use in a... So PBL is not, it's a methodology, but the teaching patterns are the same as in any other teaching way. So, you have to give them continuous training to upskill them and upgrade them all the time. So I know so much about math teaching. Is there a different way of teaching them tables? So let me look at Jodo again and see. Let me look at Jolly Phonics and see if there are different ways of doing sounds also with them. So we have to give them continuous training. That is how it happens. Because how we do it here, we are flipping the entire thing. In a traditional setup, you teach them something and they need to remember that. Here, the children are teaching themselves, because essentially they're starting out with creating something. So they've got the question with them. So, they've got a question, then they get their research material. So they're evaluating whatever they've got. They have to justify a stand that they've taken over there. So they have to argue, they have to defend, they have to judge, they have to select, they have to support, they have to critique. They need to do all of that with the material that they've gotten. Then they have to analyze, they have to draw conclusions from the ideas that they have come up with. Why is this idea better than that idea? So they need to analyze over there. Then they have to apply that, okay, having done this, do we get closer to the solution? And then they understand that, okay, this is how it is, and remembrance comes there. Remember what you've done.
Thank you so much. This was so insightful. Just to end the talk, maybe if you could give us some takeaways on, since it's a new skill that is getting explored specifically in India, something on where the teachers or the educational institute get the information, which books to refer or which reading material to refer, and how can they start implementing PBL in their organization?
Okay, so for instance at Vega, my teachers all create their own content. So they look at the CBSE, they keep the CBSE books as the guidelines, because end of the day, we are a CBSE affiliated school and our children need to take the CBSE board exams in grade 10th and grade 12th. So therefore, We keep the CBSE NCERT books as a guideline, and then we look at different reference books and get in different perspectives. Our teaching is many-sided, it's multifaceted. We don't give them just one-sided perspective. So we get it in from different areas, and we create our own reading material which we share with our learners. So we have our own booklets and our own content in school, which we upgrade from time to time because there's so much research happening in it, and we get all of those inputs in. That's how we do it.
Lovely session, ma'am. Thank you so much for all the knowledge that you've given to us today on problem-based learning. And we hope that your organization is able to take it ahead wider and wider. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here. Have a good evening. Thank you.